Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is Ukraine War news update, I guess the second part for today, given that I've done an extra Andrew Perpetua loss list short video to go through 3 missing days there. So we'll now get onto the normal hits and losses start to the day. All the caveats apply to the Ukrainian general staff figures that you can see. The caveats can be found in the description to the video below. Some pretty high numbers here. I'm wondering whether one of them is a record number. We'll have a look at that by looking at Dell's loss statistics that you can find also linked in the description to the video below. And we're going to look at the daily losses for multiple launch rocket systems. So all of the different categories can be found below. We're going to look at the data category to look at MLRS, which is found there. And we're going to see what the daily edition is, the MLRS Plus. And we can see that today is the 4th. And we have 8 there. The record is 10. So the daily record high is 10. But the average is 1.27. So you can see it's like phenomenally above average. Okay, 1,230 personnel loss is a high number, of course. 15 tanks is almost double the daily average, so that's high. 31 troop-carrying AFVs is almost double the daily average, so that's high. 59 artillery systems is over triple the daily average, so that's high. Multiple launch rocket systems is 8. That is over 4 times the daily average, probably closer to 5 times the daily average there. So that is high, obviously. 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, useful depending on what it is. We have 70 vehicles and fuel tanks, incredibly high number there, and 3 pieces of special equipment. So that is a tough day at the office for the Russians. There's no doubt about that. Of course, the question, as I always say, is what are the Ukrainians losing as well? If we look at what's visually been confirmed to have been lost, this is October the 2nd. And we haven't got the one from October the 3rd yet. So he's just 1 day behind as it is, but that's a good catch up. And you can see here that Andrew is showing I guess a 4-to-1 loss ratio overall. Forget the black ones at the bottom. Don't forget them. Those are real human beings, civilians killed in civilian vehicles by the war criminal Russians. But otherwise, in terms of military losses, it's about 4-to-1. Combat asset losses, so artillery, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, APCs and MRAPs, it's about a 3-to-1, maybe even 4-to-1 loss ratio. So it's really good for the Ukrainians there. Another good day at the office, statistically speaking. Now let's see if there are any anomalies or ones that we should sort of take note of. It's going to be one of these difficult days, isn't it, with the browser not liking to magnify this. I'll have to sort that out. Sort of sorted it out. Anyway, we have for the Ukrainian losses 3 tanks on there, all of them damaged. Oh no, 2 of them damaged, 1 destroyed. We have a boat on there as well. In terms of what's destroying things, many of these are unknown causes, so it's obviously a lot of stuff that has been destroyed, and then you're seeing the charred wreckage afterwards and wondering what the hell did it. We have a striker abandoned for the APCs, Humvee, Senator, and M113 destroyed and M113 damaged. So all of this pretty much Western equipment going on there in terms of the APCs. But as far as the infantry fighting vehicles, tanks and AFVs are concerned, those are all old Soviet equipment. So that's interesting. I always say it's good in one sense to see Western equipment there, because it means that they're using the best equipment in order to be losing it. The other way of looking at it is you'd rather lose Soviet legacy equipment than newer Western equipment. So there's 2 different ways of looking at it. Anyway, that's a split there. Trucks and civilian vehicles, not a huge amount of either of those for the Ukrainians. Then Russian losses are fairly substantial. We have 2 air defense systems. So remember the other day there was a huge amount added to the general staff figures. I can't remember what one of the days recently had something like 6, I think, or in fact what we can do is we can go and look at that over time. This is a great thing about having Dell stats. They are so awesome. So we can look at air anti-aircraft. So 1100, 1102. So maybe I'm going back a little further. Yeah, 7. There, so that's all the way back to my birthday, 26th of September there. So there was 1 day of quite a lot lost in a single day. Sometimes there's lag times of quite a long long period, really. You can't guarantee that the stuff that you're seeing on any given day has anything to do with the last 1 or 2 days. It might be a week ago, it might be a month ago, it might be 6 months ago, and the video just emerges on internet. Anyway, 2 air defense systems there, a Strela 10 and an OSA. So these are older short-range air defense systems, Strela 10 particularly, short-range, OSA there. I need to look into the OSA a lot more. Okay, destroyed BM-21 Grad, so that's another multiple launch rocket system destroyed there, and then a number of D-30 howitzers and an MT-12 Repair anti-tank gun. These are fairly old bits of kit. Tanks, we have a range T-80s, T-72s, and unknowns. Captured infantry fighting vehicle, BMP-2. And then just quite a large number of destroyed and abandoned vehicles, BMP-1s, 2s, and 3s, mainly. So, yeah, just another bad day at the office for the Russians in terms of a massive equipment being lost. Of course, quite a bit of civilian equipment destroyed, including the odd motorcycle, some destroyed and damaged motorcycles there. Usual ATVs thrown in for good measure. So, yeah, challenging for the Russians across the board, statistically speaking. Okay, what do we have here? Another assassination of a traitor in occupied Ukraine. So this is like the third one, I think, of the sorts, third sort of partisan strike like this over the last 3 days. Andriy Korotsky, who collaborated with Russia when it took over the nuclear power plant in Enerhodar, it said he named employees who were pro-Ukraine and assisted in war crimes against them. Anyway, his car is caught on camera, driving and then disassembling itself fairly. You can't see it there, but basically it explodes. I can't play it to you, but that is the end of him and his car. Novosibirsk, we have what's happened. Regional FSB office was set on fire. According to Ukraine's General Military Intelligence, the building was ignited after flammable materials were thrown in. I'm fairly sure the guy that actually blew it up ran away with burning hands there. I'm sure he got that liquid all over himself. But anyway, that is a sabotage, bit of partisan activity in Novosibirsk. Regional FSB office, again, either people are generally disaffected with war or they are easily susceptible to payments from the Ukrainian military intelligence. So it could be either going on there. Now, a couple of good bits of news for the Ukrainians here. It's reported out on September the 20th, 2024, so this is going back a few weeks. In the Kursk region, 6 kamikaze drones attacked the positions of the Russian S-400 air defense system battery, as a result which 2 launchers were destroyed. 1 more was damaged and a control center was damaged. There were no casualties among the personnel. So that is really good news. Now we're hearing from last night a strike on a Russian 96L6 radar of the S-400 complex in the Belgorod region, and this is coming from Come Back Alive. So that's really good news for the Ukrainians as well. 2 high-value air defense strikes coming out, or news of which has come out in the last 24 hours. Also, this one might end up being on Andrew Perpetua's list in the next 24 hours or so as well, since that has just emerged too. So really high value equipment being taken out there. And we are hearing destruction of another column of Wagner equipment in Mali. I don't know if the Ukrainians have anything to do with this in the way that they did supposedly last time, but Wagner getting a bloody nose there. There's imagery to show that the Bear unit of mercenaries is operating in Syria at the moment. That's unsurprising. The Russians have been operating there for a long time, obviously, but certainly the Russians still very much active abroad, even though they had brought some of their, in fact, it was a Bear unit being brought back from, was it Niger, back to Kursk to help fight up there. So anyway, good news to see the Russians getting a bloody nose outside of their own borders as well. And then a bit of Russia on fire here. This is quite a nice one to watch because it's not that, fire or arson. I don't know if it's arson. Is a good thing to see, but this is a fireworks shop, and so you end up getting quite a few fireworks going off. I think at the beginning of this video, flying out into the streets, as you can see there. and some of them exploding in the air around the shop there. There you go. Bang. So, Russia on fire. I don't know that's particularly significant other than it is another fire in the middle of another city. That's St. Petersburg there. Right, okay, moving on to distance strikes. We have 19 attack drones. That's a smaller amount that we have seen on most other nights in the last couple of weeks, but still, not insignificant. 19 attack drones were fired. 9 were shot down, leaving 10 to possibly find their target. Well, actually, 7 of those fell to electronic warfare. So that's 16, leaving 3 drones finding their targets, one presumes. That's an okay interception rate. We have seen a lot of 100% and higher interception rates. Of course, when you have a smaller number, you miss a couple there, it messes around with the percentages. Okay, as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, there was some significant hits last night by them on Russia. 2 Russian oil depots catch fire, says Euromaidan Press. Ukraine says it hit 1. Early on 4th of October, drone attack set an oil depot ablaze in Russia's Voronezh Oblast, about 200 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, according to local officials. Voronezh Oblast governor claimed that several drones were suppressed by electronic warfare systems, but one allegedly fell on the premises of an oil depot in the Anensky district, igniting a fire in an ostensibly empty tank. Ukraine's general staff later confirmed that the attack targeted the Annan-Neft product fuel storage facility near the settlement of Anna. The Post noted at least one of the vertical tanks was hit and a fire broke out. Okay, so trying to make sense of this. 90 kilometers where we have in Voronezh region, there are reports of an oil depot burning following a Ukrainian drone attack. Unverified videos said to be in the Anensky district. And then there's another video of in the same location, presumably, he says, of a drone exploding at the end of this. It's at night, it's all dark, and then a drone explodes, and there you see it. So something goes off over there. Then we're trying to work out the damage going on, past that and into today. 2 Russian oil depots were targeted last night by Ukrainian drones. In the Voronezh region, a drone struck a fuel tank, while in the Perm region, fuel containers are burning across an area of 10,000 square kilometers. And there's quite a bit of imagery of stuff burning, but actually it looks mainly like, so Tendar, I think, no, is it Tendar? Yeah, Tendar says a fire broke out an oil depot in Perm region, Russia. The Russian authorities didn't disclose the reason, but it could be, again, incoming debris. I do not think that the oil and gas plant itself is burning, but a facility south of it. It contains parked fuel trucks. This is also corroborated by the NASA firm's map that suggests that actually the facility itself wasn't particularly on fire, and it could well be just vehicles on fire, as you can see from videos catching that. But today there are still, significant fires going on. So you can rest assured that quite a bit of damage has been done and is continuing to be done to at least one of these facilities. So that's good news. We haven't seen the Ukrainians strike at oil facilities for some time. They've hit a couple of air bases more recently. And indeed, reporting from Ukraine says Ukraine targets Russia's guided bomb warehouses and aircraft in Voronezh Oblast airfield attack. So that was featuring, I presume, in a reporting from Ukraine video. But I reported on that yesterday, I think it was. And there is... no, I haven't got it. But there is imagery now coming out of that, satellite imagery, but it's low resolution. You can tell there was scorch marks around that, as you can see from the actual fire. But people are unsure as to what significant damage was done as of yet. It could be a lot. It might not be. Who knows? But certainly 2 oil facilities in a spot of bother as a result of some Ukrainian drone attacks last night. And we'll see if any further information emerges. Now, Russia has launched 119 Kinzhal missiles. So these are the supersonic, the best missile that Russia has, although some claim it's just a slightly upgraded version of an Iskander. It doesn't really qualify as being like the best of hypersonic missiles, aeroballistic missile. But anyway, Russia has launched 119 of those at Ukraine. They were supposed to be kind of invincible missiles. That's what they're announced as by, I think, even Putin prior to the war. Unstoppable, but 28 of these 119 have been shot down. So that's about a quarter of them, really. And that is, Not the best stats for a missile that's supposed to be as good. So here it says, yeah, it's 119. Yeah. So most of the objects hit by the Kinzhals were civilians, 68 civilian versus 15 military. So these Kinzhals are used predominantly to hit civilian infrastructure. Does that say something about their inaccuracy? Does that say something about the ability to send them off route by using electronic warfare? Or does it say that they are just used indiscriminately and the Russians don't care about the targeting, or so on and so forth? Or do care and they actually want to actively take out civilians to try and break their spirit? Who knows? But from the available data, it looks like the Ukrainians have done an okay job of taking out Kinzhals, all things considered. Because the Russians had you believe that should be 0 out of 119, but 28 out of 119 is pretty good considering. Would they like to shoot down more? Yes, of course they would. And most of them seem to be aimed at civilians. Okay, Pentagon has said that NATO will not shoot down Russian missiles and drones over Ukraine for fear of being drawn into a war. They said that Allied help in destroying drones over Israel and similar actions in Ukraine are two very different landscapes and battlefields. The only difference is Russia has nukes, Iran doesn't have nukes. That is why Allied forces are helping to shoot down drones and missiles sent by Iran. That's the only difference. There you go. It's escalation and anti-escalation thinking or escalation management at play. Okay, there's a video that's come out of a Russian drone hitting Belarus, so one that's presumably been turned around by spoofing or whatnot. It's reported there are power cuts in that area yesterday, but that's not confirmed. This has been caught on camera. I don't know if it's this camera that has got the person in trouble. So we then hear in Kalonikovichi, Belarus, KGB and SOBR, so they're still called the KGB in Belarus, by the way, and SOBR punishers brutally detained a local resident who filmed the explosion of a Russian drone. Yeah, it's that footage there. Of a Russian drone in the town yesterday. She is suspected of cooperation with extremist resources. Thus, Lukashenko's regime confirmed that Russian Shahid drones, which fly into the airspace of Belarus on a regular basis, indeed went astray yesterday and became a threat to the Belarusians. These drones can hit any yard and any house, and if the regime rats think that they won't be affected, they are wrong, says Nexter. While they are practicing terror against civilians, we are shocked by the Russian drones. A Shahid, of course, can explode anywhere, even fly into the window of a new building where the law enforcers are settled, is what they have to say about that. So anyway, rounding up people who just show images of Russian drones going awry. Okay, moving on to other bits and pieces. I will not show you this video for obvious reasons. It is horrible. It is a man. So how many more of our men, says Ukraine Frontline, women and children must be killed by the Russians to allow us to win this war? Somebody's ordinary dad, hopefully grandfather who defended his country and his family. So this chap, he's stripped from the waist up. They treat him roughly, smack his head against the side of a trench, and then it cuts to him being made to walk off into no man's land, and then they shoot him from behind with AK-47s, and they kill him. It's horrible. It's a horrible video. These are horrible instances, and many of these Russian soldiers are horrible human beings, allowed to get away with or ordered to do these terrible things. Yet another Russian POW execution by Russia, says Tim White. Although not yet verified, everything about this looks genuine. It's just sickening. Absolutely. Lviv Journal says, watch this video and remind yourself that the Vatican, Trump, China, Germany, Brazil, Hungary, Slovakia, Austria, and the UN and others want Ukraine to sign a peace deal with Russia. And this is who these people are. Any forced negotiation will play to the Russian hand, and they are doing things like this on a daily basis. They've just executed 16 POWs lined up in a field. There's another one to add to the long list of people that Russia has murdered in a war criminal manner. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. This is Vovchansk. This is what Vovchansk used to look like. And that's what it looks like now, because liberation by the Russians is disgusting. This is what Vovchansk looks like from the air. That is what liberation does. That's Russian liberation for you. It's horrific. And meanwhile, the river just next door in the Kursk region, coming down into Belgorod, has been poisoned by Russians in Another, I think, war crime in terms of ecocide. And then back at home, a Putin ally has been found dead with a gunshot wound near his, more than a wound, near Moscow. Seems they kill their friends as well as enemies. Basically, life expectancy of Russia is just plain short, says Sir Bill Browder, the American who's now based in the UK, and the Magnitsky Act famously declares himself Putin's biggest enemy. Did an excellent TED talk on that a few years back, well worth going to listen to. But yeah, he is observing that. Well, I wonder, if this is not Putin killing his own otherwise friend, then could you have kind of factions developing in the Kremlin? I don't know. Interesting. And finally, UK intelligence has come out and said that Russia's missile strike on a grain ship was likely due to poor targeting. So this is the missile that slammed into the MV Aya on the 11th of September, sometime just a few weeks back. If you remember, I reported it. I think it was connected to Turkey. I don't know what flagged vessel it was, but it was owned. Was it owned by a Turkish entity? Anyway, it's all pretty controversial because you've got a missile hitting a commercial export ship. The question was why, and the British, I think, said last month Ukraine's Air Force reported that Russia launched two Kh-22-32 cruise missiles from a Tu-22 M3 bomber over the Black Sea towards Zmyny Island, which is Snake Island. Later, President Zelensky said that Russian strategic bomber fired a missile at a civilian cargo vessel near the island in the Black Sea. No casualties reported. He highlighted that Russia's actions threaten global food security by targeting civilian vessels, implying that the strike was intentional. So that was the initial claim. Now the UK intelligence update says it was likely poor targeting. Was it? Is it Heinlein's razor? What's the one which is don't put down to malice what can be better explained by cock up, essentially. On the 11th of September 2024, a merchant vessel was struck by a missile. It's likely the MV Aya, says the UK intelligence update, was the intended target for the mission. It was unlikely it was the intended target, and was likely struck due to poor targeting procedures from Russian pilots during using an aging munition. Russia has regularly attacked targets along Ukraine's Black Sea coastline, including Snake Island, as they attempt to disrupt export activity and degrade any military assets in the area. You could argue, if you were being a bit conspiratorial, that the British are saying this so that there's no overt escalation that happens on the back of it. Because if they did intentionally target this, then okay, what does the West do about that? And if the answer is, well, nothing, we don't want to do anything about that, then you don't want to look weak. So the way you don't look weak is by saying, oh, I think that it was a mistake. They didn't mean to do that as a mistake. Now, I'm not saying it was intentional, by the way. I have absolutely no idea whether it was intentional or targeted on purpose. But you could read that in one of two ways, is all I'm saying. Yeah, so following the loss of a backfire in April this year, Russia has almost certainly been more wary than with their strike operations in the Black Sea. It's a realistic possibility this incident occurred due to pilots incorrectly identifying MV Aya as their target in haste, wanting to depart the area immediately after launch for fear of being targeted by a Ukrainian surface-to-air missile. Right, this is, what you have to understand is this is utterly speculative. And I'm not sure they're consistent with their language. This is really important, by the way. When you talk about language, intelligence analysis language, they talk about this here. If you want to look at their use of language, these are their like modal. This is the modal meaning, probability, and whatnot. This is the modal language they use, and it's slightly different from the US one. So the US one goes to 80% up here, I think. So likely or probable is 50% to 75% for the UK, highly likely 80 to 90, and almost certain 95%. So when they say likely or unlikely is 25 to 35%. So unlikely has a very definite defined range. in terms of probability. It's not just a random word, oh, they likely did that, or it was unlikely they did that. You know, as we would use that term on a daily basis, we kind of like, we're having an intuitive opinion about something. Unlikely just means less than 50%, right? For them, unlikely means 25 to 35%. Likely 50 to 75%. Okay, so when you understand that, then you go back to this. They say it is unlikely that it was the intended target. There's unlikely that it was the intended target, meaning that is 25 to 35% chance it was intended, right? 25 to 30% chance it was intended. But which means that let's switch that around. This is where I think they're being inconsistent. 25 to 35% chance that it was intended, which means that there's a 65 to 75% chance it was not intentional, right? So that's the claim. 65 to 75% chance it's not intentional, that it was a mistake, let's say. Then they go on to say Russia's almost certainly been more wary. Okay, so that's like what was that? 85 to 95%. So almost certainly been more wary. It is realistic possibility this incident occurred due to pilots incorrectly identifying it as a target in haste. It's a realistic possibility, which doesn't there. So 40 to 50%. So that they are saying it's 65 to 75% it was a mistake, of which it's out of that most of the chance is that being that they've done it in haste. I just think they're being, you know, I don't know if it's contradictory, but I'm fairly sure this is heavily speculative. Realistic possibility that this incident occurred due to pilots incorrectly. So the realistic possibility is less than 50%, right? But then they're saying over 50% it was not intentional. And I don't know that you can parse apart those two so easily. I don't know. Maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but I just think there's a lot of speculation going on there. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I could get more geeky with an analysis there, but I figured it would take this video on to much longer than it needs to be. Take care, guys. Speak to you soon, and thanks so much for all your continuing support.